Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 526 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our sixth book just came out. It's called I'm So Beautiful, It's Ridiculous, Unleashing and Promoting Strength, Self-Worth, and Real Sisterhood. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of fraternity and sorority life is that you have a group of students that are watching you at all times. And the latest surveys and research actually shows that fraternity members have lower rates of depression and anxiety than non-affiliated students. And at a time when men have significantly lower number of close friends, many of them actually have zero close friends that they actually consider. Fraternity to me is more relevant than ever. So today we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to talk about suicide. We're going to be talking about mental health in a really, really important conversation for all of our college student listeners. So our next guest for the last 20 years, Carey Conley, has had a flourishing business career, which has taken her all over the world. Unfortunately, tragedy struck and everything changed. She lost her husband Ross in 2014, and then just 3 years later, she lost her son Cole at age 26, both to suicide. Today, Carey helps people create a crystal clear written vision for every area of their life so they take action every day towards living out their purpose. And purpose is what gives people hope. Welcome to the show, Carey.
Mike, wow. Thank you. You just inspired me with that introduction.
Listen, I'm available to introduce you all over the country on
Okay.
stages all over. So
We
you just
can
let
make
me know,
that
just
work.
pack me in your suitcase.
I would love it.
Well, I think our audience would love to learn a little bit of background about you, which I absolutely love. You actually chose Oklahoma State University for your undergraduate experience. So tell our audience, why did you choose Oklahoma State?
Well, I would love to tell you that, it's because I really wanted the best degree out there, which it is an awesome school. But it's because I met my husband in high school and he was from Oklahoma and wanted to go to college there. So I followed him, is what happened.
Go Pokes. All right, I
Go
got it. All
Pokes.
right, so Ross is headed to Oklahoma State. So you're saying, all right, well, I'm following this guy and we're going.
That's what happened and loved it. Truly loved it.
Yeah,
So much that my daughter actually ended up going to school there and graduating as well and met her husband there. So we're all big fans.
it's a special place for sure, for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
And you actually joined Phi Mu at Oklahoma State as well. Tell our audience what was special about the Sisters of Phi Mu that made you want to join them.
I actually pledged late. I didn't pledge until I was a junior.
Hmm.
And so it was a matter of connection on more of a mature level with some of the sisters because I'd been around, for a while. And it turns out that I don't know, everybody does the rush so differently, but we had to stay in a dorm the entire week. And they had girls on the floor taking care of us, but we could not know what house they were in that whole week. So it turns out that the woman who was our floor manager turned out to become my big sister in the house.
Very nice.
So it was just I think a God thing all the way around, really
Yeah.
where I was meant to be.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. And that's
Yeah.
also great that you joined as a junior too. I love it when people find their homes junior year, even senior year sometimes. I think
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing. We even have alumni initiates as well for people
Right.
that want to join, that want to be a part of it, that maybe didn't have that experience. So I love that you joined as a junior and you found your home there. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. It was short and sweet, my 2 years in the house, but I held an office and loved it. And still to this day, my big sister and my grand big are great friends.
Oh, I love that. I love that you
Yeah.
maintain those relationships. That's awesome. And I love that lifetime commitment to the organization through those very special people. I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Now, you had a very successful career in business, and then ultimately you lost your husband to suicide in 2014. What was going on in Ross's life back then in 2014?
There was a lot going on in our life at that point. We had become empty nesters.
Hmm.
So my son was in college in Florida, and then transferred back to We're from Colorado originally.
Hmm.
Um, Transferred back to Colorado State, and then my daughter, of course, went off to OSU. So we were empty nesters. My husband had a really thriving career with the same company for over 25 years, and a lot of things were shifting there. There was mergers happening, and he was kind of getting a little nervous about what was going to happen with his position, even though I dropped my phone, so sorry.
It's okay.
um, so there was just a lot of identity stuff happening with him around that, a lot of relationship stuff with him and I and our family. I just think there was a lot of pressure, and a lot more in-depth things, of course, that I knew was happening.
Hmm. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, my wife and I are actually empty nesters ourselves this year for the first time ever. Our son is a sophomore, our daughter is a freshman, and it definitely takes its toll on you. I mean, it's
Mhm.
definitely different having an empty house. It's just us and the cats. And like it's just so weird because as parents, like you pour everything you have into these kids.
Right.
And it was almost like for a little while, like I had to like almost reintroduce myself to my wife again because you
Right.
pour everything into your kids and it's always all about them. It's like, what do the kids want to eat? Where do the kids want to go on vacation? And you almost lose your own identity in this process. Like,
You
does
do.
that resonate with you?
Yeah, you do. And the other thing that you lose is a lot of the friendships that you'd have
Yeah,
because so much of our adult friends were so tied to our kids' activities, right?
right.
So there's that. I mean, all of a sudden, instead of having all these activities with parents that came along that were friends of ours, that all stopped. And so I remember just every night around the same time, he'd look at me because we both worked from home.
Hmm.
Look at me like, what are we gonna do for dinner? I mean, it became like Groundhog Day, right? No, I don't care.
Yeah.
Are we eating in? Are we going out? I mean, it was just, there's a lot of loss when the kids go off.
Yeah, there really is. It's interesting too because when we had COVID, we actually started doing this Hello Fresh delivery, and
Yes.
that kind of helped us to like make decisions around dinner. We would just get like these Hello Fresh
Yep.
shipments. It was just easier than going to the supermarket and dealing with all the stuff that was going on
Sure.
with COVID at the time. And now we just continue that. So now it's like, all right, we have these like 5 meals every week that we can prepare whenever. And so it's like, here's the five. What do you want out of the five? And that
Right.
kind of helps us to make decisions. So
Right.
that way we're not like sitting there contemplating forever. And then 9 o'clock rolls around. You're like, yeah, we didn't have dinner yet. That's great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Unbelievable.
thing. There's just a lot. And I don't think, we just don't prepare for it well enough
Yeah.
because it just happens like that. Right.
Hmm.
So, one minute you're standing at graduation, all the activity around that, and the next minute you're looking at their empty bedroom going, what just happened?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, and then 3 years later, you
Mhm.
actually lost your son Cole to suicide at age 26. And I'm sure the loss of his father was absolutely devastating. What was going on with Cole at that time when he was 26?
Again, lots of layers to that, Mike, right? So
Hmm.
he had started his career in Arizona, which is where I live now.
Hmm.
I followed him here because I just loved it
Hmm.
and was doing very, very well. He worked for one of the news stations here. And I think again, the pressure of, is this really what I want to do? I don't think he was happy with the job. He was scared to death to make a change, which is again this is very common in this age group right now, unfortunately. Is why I'm so focused on helping them, is because they're coming out of college with degrees they were told to get,
Hmm.
going and getting the right job and just wondering, this is what I did all this for? Do I really even love this? But not knowing how to make those changes confidently and being scared to death that they're making the wrong decisions. right? And
Hmm.
unfortunately, and I know this a lot because I interview a lot of young adults on my podcast, because they're very transparent with me. They really love sharing with me what's going on. And so many of them have said that they feel like they're already behind. And I think that has a lot to do with the social media pressure they see, right? Of everybody crushing it on social media. I'm making my first million at the age of 23. And they're wondering, it's just so there's just a lot. It's
Yeah,
just
but we
a lot.
also know not everything on social media is even accurate, right? I
We
mean,
do
they're
know
seeing
that.
their friends in, let's say, a Ferrari or something like that, but little do you know it's actually just a rental for the day. But you look at that on Instagram and you're like, how come I don't have a Ferrari? Like,
Right.
I should have one at age 23. And there's
Right.
all this comparison that's going on. So you're
A lot of
constantly comparing
comparison.
yourself to somebody else's best day on Instagram. And then you start to question whether or not you're actually on the right path. You're always comparing yourself, saying, well, maybe the path that they're on is
Hmm.
actually better. And so there's no
Right.
confidence in any one of these paths.
Right. Exactly.
Mm,
And
mm,
that,
mm.
and you would think that with all the social media, they would be super connected to each other, and it's quite the opposite. They feel very isolated and very lonely.
Yeah.
And they're afraid to, reach out to each other and talk about. I think it's starting to change a little bit, but especially again in young men, it's very hard. Which I would, when you were saying that the suicide and depression rate is lower than when they're in a fraternity, and that would make sense to me
Yeah,
because you have built-in brothers that you can talk to
exactly.
that have your back. They're looking out for you.
Right.
Uh, I remember when my son was in his fraternity, he went into a leadership role, and a lot of that part of his leadership role was checking in on his brothers.
Yeah, that's what it was
Yeah.
all about for us. We were constantly checking in on guys. And if there was like one brother in the fraternity house that didn't leave his room for a week or like suddenly didn't shower for a week or something like
Yeah.
that, something weird was going on that was out
Right.
of character, we could see it immediately. We were like,
Right.
what's going on with this?
Right.
And I feel like in a fraternity, there are other people watching you, so we can easily alert the authorities and say, hey, we got a problem. What's our plan? What are we going to do in order to rectify this? But if you're
Right.
not in a fraternity or sorority, I don't feel like you have those built-in support systems. It's just you're a
Right.
lone wolf. You're just kind of out there, you know?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yes.
So interesting. All right. So now, I mean, kind of related, you're on this mission now to save 1 million lives by helping youth, adults, parents to decipher their life vision and their purpose. But the college students, like you said, I mean, they're just really struggling trying to figure out what is their purpose in life? Why were they put here on this earth? So,
Right.
how do you figure out what that purpose is?
So I have a methodology that I created years ago that I've walked thousands of people through, and it's where I get people to think in time frames, Mike.
Mm,
So specifically, I will get people to think 3 years out. I give
mhm,
them kind of a target to look at,
mhm,
and then think about how old they will be 3 years from 3 years out,
mhm.
how old their family members will be, and so on. Because most of us don't sit down to think about that. And when I get people to think about it, they start seeing a number that they think, oh, wow. Then I'm going to be 35 or I'm going to be 25 or I'm going to be 65. Um, it gives you kind of a visual to shoot for of what you would love to create your life to look like at that point. And the reason I do this is because I was taught how to do this in my late 20s. My first mentor asked me, if you don't love the 9 to 5 gig, which I did not, you can create your life to look like whatever you want. You've just got to get clear on what that is.
Mm,
Right.
mhm.
So I got very clear on the fact that I knew I wanted to work from home. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a leader in my industry. I wanted to teach other people how to do the same. And so when I get people to really think a little bit more futuristic of what they want to create, it gives them a little bit of hope and it lets them figure out, okay, what is it that I really love doing? Who am I really?
Mm.
Right. So I give people kind of that visual so that whatever their circumstances are in right now, they can kind of see beyond that and go to work at breaking it down into some baby steps.
Man, I love what you're doing. That's so inspiring. You and your daughter wrote the book. It's called Keep Looking Up,
Right.
Transforming Grief into Hope After Tragedy. I know the story about this Keep Looking Up, but tell our audience, how did you come up with that title, Keep Looking Up?
It's just interesting. It just came to us after my son passed. We, I don't know what you're referring to, but at his memorial, we
Hmm.
had golf balls
Hmm.
because my son loved golf. I'm pretty sure that's what he's doing every minute of every day in heaven right now. But
Yeah.
we had them and they were in bright orange, OSU orange. And on it, we put Keep Looking Up.
Yeah.
And so that's where the title of the book came from.
Very cool. I think I read somewhere that this was like kind of like a story. I think it was your husband
Mhm.
teaching somebody in the family how to ride a bike, wasn't it? And then like it was just kind of like keep looking up because you're going to go the way on where you're
Yes, my
looking.
daughter.
It
Yes.
was your daughter, right?
Yeah. Yes. That's the other part of the Keep Looking Up is that is a part of the book that she talks about.
Yeah.
She remembers about her dad and the perspective on life that she has.
Yeah, I think that was the key right there was just you're going to go in the direction of where you're looking, so keep looking up, and
Right.
then ultimately you're not going to crash on this bicycle. Like that was kind of the whole idea on it from
Yep.
your daughter's perspective. Really good stuff.
Yep. There's that. And then there's also our faith
Yeah,
that we
sure.
refer to,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
See beyond this world that we're in right now.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you've worked with so many college students over the years. How can these young adults balance the pressure that
Mm.
comes with college life when you're thinking about academics, when you're thinking about how do we afford all of this? Or you got to
Yeah.
work a job, and then maybe you have responsibilities at the sorority, so you're managing, 100 women over there. I mean, how do you balance all of these pressures while also maintaining their mental well-being?
Right. It's so hard, Mike, because, especially as freshmen, I know that my daughter's freshman year was probably the busiest year of her entire life. And my daughter's been involved in a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
but it was because she'd pledged the house. She was a leader in her Phi class. It is a big homecoming at Oklahoma State is a big deal.
Sure.
They make these huge, what they call house decks.
Right.
I don't know if you've seen it. It's probably the largest celebration of homecoming in the country.
Hmm.
The freshmen are the ones who build those things.
Right.
And they're required to do so many hours of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they do that and do well in school. I mean, they're
Well, I
sitting there
don't
making
like it,
those
and
decks forever.
yeah, I'm not a fan. So my advice is, just because it's there and it looks like a good thing, it doesn't mean that it's the best thing you should be doing.
Hmm.
Like, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no, especially if it's sabotaging your physical health, your mental health. You're not eating, you're not sleeping, you're not doing well in your classes. What's important here? We got to get a perspective on that and prioritize,
Right. Yeah, I
right?
think you're absolutely right about that. Sometimes I feel like the priorities are just totally out of whack.
Yep.
I mean, I know the priorities were out of whack with me. I mean, I majored in fraternity. I mean, let's be honest, right? I really did. And
Yeah.
it's like, and people look at it was funny because I applied for my master's degree, and there was this whole like application process, and they got a copy of my transcript from when I was an undergrad. And they looked at my transcript and they're like, Mike, how come your grades are so terrible? And I was
Yeah.
like, because I majored in fraternity, everything was about the fraternity, and my priorities were just completely upside down. And it wasn't
Right.
until later in life, the master's program, and then now the doctorate, that I actually got a 4.0 in both of the grad school programs that I'm in.
Sure.
But it's because the priorities are right. That's
Right.
it. You
Yes. And you've gotten really super clear, Mike, on what it is that what your purpose is,
Right.
right? Um, and you're passionate about it.
Sure.
When we're going in as freshmen and we're being told to take art history 101 or something, political science, we're all like, why?
Right.
I have no passion around that. And accounting, don't even get me started. I think
Oh
I had to
my
go through
God.
that class like 3 times to get.
You know what's wild is I actually majored in accounting as an undergrad, and I
Oh,
actually graduated with it. It was impossible and it was so boring. You have no idea.
right.
Like debits and credits are like mind-numbingly boring.
Yes. Yeah. If my counselor had not slept me out of calculus, I'd still be there. Seriously. I just went in crying one day going, look, this is the only thing holding me here.
Yeah,
Get me out. I will never pass this class. But you figured out, okay,
right,
this is what I love, and I want to go all in on it.
right.
And that's the thing.
Yeah. Well, that probably helped to give you some clarity in terms of your career, like what
Right.
things you can do really well and what things you're like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to do this, right? So maybe that's why you have that variety to figure out what you like, what you don't like. And you're right. I mean, calculus for me, I was good at math and calculus was hard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, boy, oh boy, some of those classes are just brutal. Maybe you're right. In grad school, you're really focusing on things that you really enjoy. And
Yeah.
so there's not these additional classes that you have absolutely no interest in whatsoever that you're being forced to take, even though
Right.
you hate it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Uh,
think the system needs a little revamping, but we won't go there. So
that's a whole other podcast
totally.
conversation.
I just really want them to know that if they're trying to balance it all, it's just like any phase of our life, we've got to figure out what's priority,
Mhm.
stick to those things that are majorly important and they're a part of the vision right now. And just be able to say no to some things. It's okay.
Yeah. So, what are some strategies that the students can use in order to support their friends, their sisters, their brothers
Mm,
who might be struggling with their mental health? What should
yeah.
they do?
So much has shifted around that, especially since COVID. I think we've become so much better at communicating and asking than we have in the past.
Mhm.
I think in the past we've been too afraid to even talk about it, especially to the level of somebody thinking about taking their life.
Right.
And there's a myth, and I believed this myth until I've learned from the experts that if you ask somebody, "Are you thinking about taking your life?" that you're actually planting the seed,
Mm.
right? And that is so not the case. And if they answer, you know what, I'm really not doing well, you need to be a very safe space. No judgment, no coming in, giving out all sorts of advice. You just need to be there for them and say, you know what, I'm hearing you. How can I help you and how can I support you? And let's go find that help that you need.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Listen, there's a counseling center on every college campus. So
There is.
maybe just walking to the counseling center with your friend
Yeah.
who is in need can certainly be something that would be of help. But yeah, you're so right. I think we don't, as humans, we're not normally geared towards asking that question. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Like, that's a
Right.
really difficult thing for me to say as an adult, let alone an 18-year-old, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are certain certifications like mental health first aid, as an example.
Mhm.
That's a certification that college students can get. And it really does prepare you. They really do kind of this role playing where you ask another human being, are you thinking about killing yourself? Just so that way you get into the practice of it. So that way, when that time comes, you feel prepared to have that conversation and actually say those words, knowing
Right.
full well that's not going to plant any seed. That's just trying to get at, hey, do you have a plan? And if you do have a plan, we need to, get you help right away, like right now.
Right. And the bigger thing, Mike, that I want to address here too is having parents be more
Mhm.
aware. I
Mhm.
think I think as peers it's easier for them to support each other, but I think it's much harder for a parent to acknowledge that there might be some serious trouble happening here
Right.
because we want to go into denial, not my kid. No, he's fine, it's just a phase he's going through. But I think as parents, especially when they move away, it's easy to get very disconnected, but we need to be really aware and not be afraid to check in and say,
Yeah.
how you doing?
Yeah. Absolutely. And the other thing too is I think for the college students who are listening right now, I think if you notice that there's a problem, don't be afraid to reach out to their parents, honestly,
Right.
also, and
Yes.
have that real conversation. I know that you might be thinking in the back of your head, like this, friend of mine, this brother or this sister in my chapter is going to absolutely hate me. But you know what? I can get help for somebody who hates me. If they're not here, I can't help them anymore.
Right.
You feel me? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So like, let's get at the heart of the matter. Don't be afraid to call somebody's parent. I got two kids in college right now. If one of their friends or their roommate or whoever calls me and says, I got a problem, I'd much rather hear about it that way and get my kid the help that they need so that way they
Mm.
don't hurt themselves.
Right. Yeah. We actually had to do this with one of my daughter's sorority sisters
Yeah,
that she was living with. I'd gotten to know the mom and they got me involved and I started reaching out to her saying, hey, I think you need to start paying attention to what's going on over here.
right.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
Are there any myths about mental health and suicide that you think need to be addressed, especially for the younger listeners that we have?
You know, um, People always ask my daughter and I, especially in the beginning, what are the signs?
Yeah.
Like they want a checklist, Mike, of
Mm.
this. And I wish it was that easy.
Yeah.
Um, because a lot of times what you will find is that the kids that appear to have it all together are the ones that are struggling the most. It's, no secret that we see, the all-star football player, leader of the team, straight A student, everybody loves him. He's charming, take his life one day, and everybody's in shock. And that was certainly the case with both my husband and my son. So I think that's the thing we need to pay attention to, is that nobody is um, out of the woods with this thing, right? Just because people appear to have it all going on, a lot of times it's quite the opposite.
Mm.
So I think you just have to be really hyper aware and super kind to each other all the time, because you just don't know.
Yeah. So, for anybody who's listening right now, how can the students become advocates for mental health awareness on their campus?
I think we've just become advocates, right? We become the voice
Hmm.
and start asking for it. So I know my school, Oklahoma State, they reached out to my daughter and I actually 4 or 5 years ago, because during that time they were putting a big mental health initiative into the school. And so we came and actually spoke on the campus and became donors for that initiative. So I think the kids just need to ask.
Yeah.
Just they need to band together and say, hey, we need more help. How can we
Mhm.
do this together with the faculty and, and the students?
Yeah. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from the students is that there's not enough counselors in the counseling center.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have to wait like 3 or 4 weeks just to get an appointment at the
Yeah.
counseling center.
Yeah.
So,
That's a
yeah, we
big
have to
problem
start.
for sure.
Yeah, we got to start addressing that. I mean, even if we start supplementing maybe with like virtual counseling and other things, there are people that are, have the certifications that we're looking for. Maybe they live in a remote place somewhere in the United States, but there's got to be a way to kind of fix that and make sure that the students get the help that they need in an efficient manner and not have to wait 3 or 4 weeks to get an appointment. I mean, 3 or 4 weeks sometimes is like an eternity to a college student. So
Right.
we have to find a way to get them the resources they need faster.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the challenge. And maybe, because of COVID, now Zoom and there's all these other options that are out there. I think it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it did show us that we can connect with each
Yeah.
other and find some ways, that are maybe a little bit outside of the box, but still get us the results that we want and
Right.
make sure that we have those connections and people talking to people. I think that's super important.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I think like I said, I've seen some changes being made already, especially with the younger kiddos. I think there's a lot of initiatives right now being put into the schools in the younger ages. But this early 20s to early 30s group, that's a challenging time frame for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I am seeing improvements. I will say that. When you and I were pledging the fraternity and sorority, it was just a different day. We didn't
Yeah,
really talk about mental health ever. It really just wasn't a conversation, but now the students are talking more about it, which is good. And I don't think the stigma about being at the counseling center or being seen at the counseling center
right,
is necessarily as bad as it used to be, a couple of decades ago, as an example. But there still is stigma in going to the counseling center. And so that's the other thing. We got to figure out ways that we can reduce that stigma. And again, Zoom call in my dorm room, nobody has to know that I'm even going there. No one's going to see me. I'm just in my
right,
dorm room with the door closed, right?
right,
So I think that's the other thing we got to look at is how do we reduce that stigma and keep driving that stigma down, keep having open conversations. How do we have that, those conversations even within our fraternity, within our sorority, when somebody is going through a difficult time? How do we have those conversations and be able to ask for help?
right,
I think those
right.
things are really, really important. All right. Well, listen, this has been a really fun conversation. And, my weakness is really good food. I like to eat. So if I find myself in that Phoenix area, where should I be going for a great bite to eat?
Oh my gosh, I knew you were going to ask me this. And I am the furthest from a foodie that anybody could be.
Oh, no.
Have you ever been here before?
I have been to Phoenix
Okay,
before.
so like this is the restaurant mecca, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's some really good restaurants.
There
You
are
haven't
very good.
found one that you like in town?
Well, I just don't think about it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. I eat because I have to, but I'm not one of those people that thinks, oh my gosh, I got to check out this new restaurant. But I live in an area called Kierland, which is
Uh-huh.
North Scottsdale.
Uh-huh.
And there are several really good restaurants in this Kierland shopping center that's right outside my door.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Very nice.
Um, If you really want to be bougie
Uh-huh.
and go hang out with the really cool kids, there is a new place that opened up here, a gentleman who owns several of the restaurants here that sold them and opened this up. I think it's called the Global Assembly.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Global Assembly. See, that's where I'm going.
Yeah. I want to make sure. Yeah.
All right,
I'll
I'm
pick
gonna
it
I'm
up
gonna
for you
go
when we
check
get
that
off.
out.
Yeah. And if you come here, you can take me with you.
I'm gonna take you with me, and then I'm gonna somehow get you to become a foodie because I'm gonna
Okay.
just
Good
like
luck.
show you all the great meals. Is that a fair deal?
Sure. Good luck.
Good luck. It's not gonna work. All right, well, at least I'll have some really good food.
You will. You will. Absolutely.
All right. So listen, this has been a lot of fun and and it's just such an important message. I think it's one that
Yes.
we need to talk about all the time. So I appreciate you sharing the stories about Ross and about Cole. I think it's important that we talk about them and understand kind of where you're coming from and what your mission is now to save 1 million lives. I think it's absolutely fantastic, really around people's vision and purpose. And I think if you're right. If we do find people's purpose in life, then I think we can do amazing things. So really, really good work. So if our listeners, if they want to bring you in to speak on their college campus, where should they go to connect with you and get access to all of this?
So my website is the easiest. There's lots of information on there and a contact link that you can get to. And it's just my name, careyconley.com.
Perfect. So Carey spells her name CareyConley.com. Go and check out the websites. That way you can check out all the videos and all the information and all the stuff about Carey. But thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of this. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for giving me a platform to talk. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Carey, I want you to like it and I want you to share it with another student that you know on your college campus that really could hear Carey's words and really appreciate it. So send it off to some other people that you love on campus. We appreciate you being here on the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us.